The Maple Street Cafe. The bell above the door jingled as Emma Thomas maneuvered her wheelchair into the cafe. A sanctuary filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. Sophia, the ever-cheerful owner, greeted her with a welcoming smile. "Good morning, Emma." "The usual?" Sophia asked, already preparing the caramel latte and blueberry muffin. Emma nodded, her fingers brushing the leather strap of her satchel, which was draped across her lap filled with sketchbooks and pencils. "Yes, please." She wheeled herself to her favorite corner, where the morning sun filtered through the clouds, casting a muted glow on her table. As she settled in, she glanced at the remaining raindrops from the storm that had passed over the city in the wee hours of the morning, her mind wandering to the cityscape she was sketching. Across the street, an older stately building had been destroyed by a fire, and a new building was emerging in its place, a reflection of her own journey since the car accident that had left her in the wheelchair. Her former self was gone, but she was determined to see a new, stronger version of herself emerge. The cafe on Maple Street had become her haven, a place where she could immerse herself in her art and momentarily forget the challenges of her new reality. While she used her computer for work-related drawings, she preferred her sketchpad and pencils when creating personal sketches. Feeling her pencil gliding effortlessly across the paper, capturing the essence of the morning light was therapeutic. It calmed her and took her mind off the chair. A moment later, the bell above the door jingled again. Alex Carter entered. His presence, like the first brushstroke on a blank canvas, filled the room with a subtle energy. He ordered his usual black coffee and plain croissant, then took his seat at the opposite end of the cafe, near the door. The casual observer might think it the habit of a busy man, the optimal location so that he could leave the cafe quickly should he need to rush to a meeting or to meet a client. But the truth was it was the best spot to be able to covertly steal a glance at the beautiful woman at the rear of the cafe as she concentrated on her sketch pad. Their eyes met briefly as he scanned the room, while waiting for his order. He had nodded to her before she quickly averted her gaze. He admired her from afar, too shy to strike up a conversation. Besides, what would he even say? "Here you go, Emma." Sophia placed the latte and muffin on the table, careful to keep it well away from the sketchpad. "How did physical therapy go this week?" Emma banished the thoughts of Alex and beamed up at Sophia. "The doctor says I'm making tremendous progress." She leaned over to whisper to Sophia, "I walked 3 steps using the bars this week." "Oh, Emma, I am so proud of you." Sophia stooped to give her a quick hug. Emma blushed and glanced towards Alex to see if he had noticed. She hoped not. She didn't want to bring attention to herself. She was just an artist in a wheelchair, and she was sure she would die if Alex looked up right now. He looked like someone with a successful career, judging by his tailored suits and polished shoes. He would probably think of her as silly, not someone serious like himself. Sophia glanced over at Alex, then smiled at Emma. "He's quite handsome." She gave her a conspiratorial wink before returning to the counter. Emma felt her face turn even redder. She hoped Alex hadn't heard Sophia, but did look up, admiring Emma's resilience and the serenity with which she carried herself. He had noticed her months ago, her wheelchair never defining her but complementing her strength and grace. He longed to talk to her, to know her story, to ask about her sketches, but he feared coming across as intrusive or patronizing. Their silent ritual unfolded, each lost in their own world, yet tethered by an unspoken connection. Emma's pencil danced across the paper, capturing not just the rainy cityscape, but also the emotions swirling within her. Alex sipped his coffee, stealing glances at the artist who had unconsciously become the highlight of his mornings. Sophia delivered a warm croissant to Alex's table, glancing over at Emma. "She's very talented." "I'm sure she is." Alex cleared his thought and tried hard not to look at Emma, feeling uncomfortable that he had been caught in his thoughts of her. Sophia kept her tone casual. "She is such a sweet girl. I worry about her sometimes." Alex felt an unexpected rush of concern. "Why?" "I worry she takes on too much." Sophie softly sked. "What does she do?" "She is an architect, and after the accident, well, I shouldn't say any more." Sophia walked away, smiling to herself. She had suspected Alex and Emma were drawn to one another, the way they both stole glances when the other wasn't looking. Today, she had been determined to confirm what she suspected and to nudge them in necessary. Days turned into weeks, and their silent routine continued. They exchanged occasional glances, smiles that lingered a second too long, and polite nods, but nothing more. Each day, they left the cafe feeling both content with the silent companionship and frustrated with their own inability to approach the other. Finally, the weeks of what seemed like cloudy weather broke. The sun shone brightly through the window, offering new hope at the possibilities of spring. Emma, lost in her sketch of flowers she had seen blooming in a window box that morning, didn't notice Alex when he entered the cafe. The warm weather seemed to have brought everyone out. The cafe was crowded, and he feared there wouldn't be any seats available. Sophie greeted him. "Such a beautiful day. I hear it will be warmer today and no rain." "Yes, I heard that too." Alex smiled, paying for his coffee and croissant. "I love spring, don't you? It makes you think anything is possible. A new start." She gave him a warm smile. Alex thought about her words. A new start. He glanced over at Emma. Yes, that was what he was going to do today. While he wanted for Sophia to pour the coffee and plate the croissant, he formulated a plan. Went over the words he had practiced at home. Today, he would have the courage to approach Emma. "Here you go," Sophia smiled. "Such a wonderful day for a fresh start with fresh coffee." She gave him a knowing smile. He carried his breakfast to Emma's table, took a deep breath. "Excuse me, may I join you?" He stood waiting for her to acknowledge him, but she didn't. His heart began to spiral slowly to his stomach. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me." Emma looked up, taken aback that Alex was standing at her table. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." She tried to smile, feeling embarrassed. "You seem deep in thought. I'm sorry to disturb you." "No, that is okay. What did you say?" He nearly lost his nerve with her deep blue eyes stared deep into his soul, laying bare all his secrets. I was wondering if I could join you this morning." He looked around the room. "It's a bit crowded this morning." Emma's eyes widened in surprise, and her mouth hung open for a moment before she realized she must look like an idiot. "Of course. Please, sit down." "Thank you." He was careful not to slosh his coffee and damage her sketchbook before she could pull it away. "It's a beautiful morning, isn't it?" he said, cursing himself for talking about the weather. A lame attempt at conversation, but he didn't know what else to say. She was even more beautiful up close. He held his hand across the table. "Alex Carter." "Emma Thomas," she replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Nice to finally meet you." "Likewise," Alex said, taking a seat across from her. "I've seen your sketches. They're amazing." Emma's blush deepened. "Thank you. I've noticed you too. You always seem so focused." Alex chuckled. "I guess I'm just good at hiding how distracted I am." They both laughed, the ice finally broken. Conversation flowed easily between them, from art to favorite books to shared dreams. The sun cast a warm glow across the table, enveloping the two. Sophia smiled with satisfaction, happy to know the pair, and finally realized what she had known all along. When it was time to leave, Alex hesitated. "Would you like to grab dinner sometime?" he asked, hoping his voice didn't betray his nervousness. Emma's heart raced. "I'd love that," she said, her smile wide and genuine. Alex held the door for Emma, and for the first time, both felt the weight of their unspoken feelings lift. The cafe on Maple Street, with its comforting routine and familiar faces, had brought them together. And now they were ready to take the next step, hand in hand, into the possibilities of tomorrow. Next story. "Okay, I think I'm sober enough to go home." Luna stood decisively and gathered her purse, stretching her arms and lingering as she made her way towards the garden gate. "I'll walk you out." Alex stood hurriedly and pushed his chair in. Luna nodded and turned to the others, offering a gracious smile. "Lee, Roderick, Bennett, nice to meet you. Have a nice rest of your night." The men exchanged knowing glances and grinned as they gave their parting farewells to the woman who had just hours ago cleaned their pockets of any spare cash at poker. Alex shot the trio a look and then followed Luna out towards the garden gate. Roderick took a long sip of his beer as he watched Alex disappear beyond the garden gate, then turned to the others with a smile. "So boys, what did we think of Alex's friend?" Lee grinned and shook his head. "Come on, man. That woman just sat through 6 hours of us yapping about our drunken college days. No friend would do that," Bennett nodded. "I thought she was nice. Plus she offered for us to ride her horse." "Oh, please. We all know the only one who's gonna ride that woman's horse is Alex, if you know what I mean," Roderick retorted with a smirk. "Besides, just because she's nice doesn't mean she's got what it takes to be with Alex. Military life isn't for everyone," Roderick continued. "Sure. But I do know that Alex hasn't talked about a woman damn near as much as he's talked about this one. Least not for a long time," Lee added. "Yeah, and I thought he was just going to walk her out." Bennett chuckled and took a swig of his beer before meeting Lee's eyes with a mischievous glint. "Say, he's been gone for a while now?" Lee said. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Bennett offered, turning to Roderick, who set his beer down. "Looks like we're going on a stealth mission tonight. I'll lead, of course." "You?" sputtered Roderick. "Please, you barely spend any time in. You're practically a civilian now. I've got this." Lee shoved Roderick playfully as he polished off his beer. "Slow down there, cadet. I think you forget we've got a real LT here, and it ain't you. I'm pulling rank. We gotta sneak out to the wall, and we should be able to see what's going on from there." The others nodded and Bennett giggled as they army crawled their way to the garden gate, shoving and shushing each other along the way as they tried to decipher Luna and Alex's voices in the distance. "Stay low," warned Lee using his most serious officer voice, but Bennett snuck a peek over the garden gate against his commander's orders. It wasn't long before the men heard a booming voice call out from the other side. "Bennett, I see your glasses," which sent them all into a fit of laughter. Tumbling past the garden gate, Lee, Roderick, and Bennett faced the voice that rang out from the ever-stoic Alex. His sea-glass-colored eyes pierced through their jinx, sobering them instantly and cutting through their escapades like a dagger. Luna's expression was unreadable, serving as a reminder of just why she kicked all their asses at poker earlier. Her whiskey-colored eyes were fixed on the men as she calculated what was to be done with them. Yet there was something about the way the pair stood there that suggested an energy shift, like they were on the precipice of some great discovery until they were rudely interrupted by some intrusive outsiders. It was Roderick who clocked this and made the executive decision to pull back the troops. Collecting Bennett and Lee, he gave an awkward nod to Alex, saying, "Sorry to interrupt. We'll just be back at the house. Don't keep him up too long, Luna," he added with a quick wink, daring her to give anything away with her expression, but she just looked away. As the trio left, Luna exhaled to breathe. She didn't know she was holding and turned back to Alex, whose expression was distant despite his body language suggesting he was far from ready to say goodbye. Always an adventure with those three. Luna attempted to break through. Alex smirked, then turned his attention back to the woman who stood in front of him, willing himself to look at her with all the importance and priority he had to give her, if just for this moment. "Sure is. Thanks for being such a good sport about them. They can be a handful, but they mean well." "I am sure they do." She glanced fondly towards the garden gate, seemingly unfazed by it all. That was one of his favorite things about her, her enduring ability to go with the flow. The way he could trust her to see every corner of his life and accept it with a smile and take it in stride. He had to tell her, "Hey, listen, there's been a bit of a change of plans, but I'm deploying in the fall." His words came out more disjointed than he had planned them to, and perhaps these weren't exactly the words he meant to tell her. But nothing ever seemed to go as planned when it came to Luna. Her eyes widened, but her tone was steady as she turned this new piece of information over in her mind, the implications sinking in as she responded, "Wow, that soon. Where are you going? And will I see you again?" "Bulgaria, and I'm not sure. I won't be back here again since my family is moving and I still have to go to Virginia after that." Alex's voice trailed off as the sobering realization that this might be the last time he saw Luna for a while, possibly ever, was hitting. Luna seemed to realize this too as she took a deep breath and picked her words carefully. "So, I guess I have to ask then, what's going on with us? Where does that leave our friendship? She picked her words carefully and diplomatically, studying Alex's expression as she said the word friendship for any sign that that was not what this was. Alex met her gaze and replied, I don't know. I've been a bit of a mess lately. I really like talking to you, I like spending time with you, and I'm so glad we reconnected and made amends. You were there at a really difficult time in my life when I needed someone, when I needed a friend. He paused at that word, friend, glancing at her expression before continuing. I'll admit that I find myself thinking about you during the day, thinking what would Luna do in this situation? And I spent time looking up things you might like to do near where I am and thinking about living in the same city as you again. Alex's voice started to trail off as he caught his tone dancing dangerously close to boyish whimsy. Luna smiled to herself, savoring the way his eyes dared to wonder about a world where they lived in closer proximity to one another. Well, I certainly feel a little less crazy, she said in an attempt to encourage Alex and to reassure herself. Why do you think I said all that stuff about traveling and wanting to be more independent? Telling you I could go anywhere in this world and that I'm open to going anywhere. I don't know if I could live the life you do, Alex, but I suppose if there's one person that I'd give it a try for, it would be you. She spoke with such earnesty, shocking herself as the weight of her feelings spilled out in her words. Wait, so what are you saying, Luna? Alex needed a nudge, some reassurance that he knew exactly what she was talking about because he couldn't afford to be wrong. Unfortunately, this need for reassurance set Luna backpedaling as she shook her head. Never mind. It's dumb, I just think it's cool sometimes to imagine the life you live now. So different from mine. It's dash. I want to give this a try too. Alex summoned the courage to lay his cards on the table. You do. Luna's hopeful eyes focused in on his words, daring them to be real this time. Yeah, I think we need to treat this like a real relationship. I mean, that's what this is, isn't it? Luna smirked and said, well, I have an idea of where we could start. But never mind. Are you asking me to kiss you? For once, Alex seemed to have understood the assignment. Yeah, Luna said matter-of-factly, worrying that her tone came off condescending. These worries quickly swept aside as Alex closed the distance between them, wrapping her in his arms. Well, I can't promise it's going to be the greatest thing in the world, dash. It's fine. Luna pulled him in closer, arms flung around his neck, and for a single moment she knew exactly what they were so scared of. Losing this. Losing the person who everything felt right with. As her lips met his, she didn't care about the long stretches of time he had been away. The drunken texts, schoolboy banter, or nights spent with much easier to love individuals. In that moment, all she cared about was him, and perhaps this time he felt the same. As they pulled away, a jovial cheer could be heard from the other side of the garden wall. The pair turned to see Roderick looking smug as he fist-bumped a whooping Bennett and a humbled Lee. Told you they weren't just friends, and I told you I'm the better leader. Roderick puffed his chest at Lee, who just shook his head. Whatever, man. I'm just glad our boy Alex finally said what we were all thinking. Alex's expression softened. Luna still wrapped in his arms as the tension of the unknown began to fade. No thanks to you knuckleheads, that's for sure. Luna smiled up at Alex, nestling into his embrace as she sighed. It only took us a decade, but was it worth it? Asked the trio. Yeah, I think it was, Luna replied as Alex pulled her in once again. Next stories. I can't be the only one. Tell me you see it? Stationed at the water fountain that I wish wholeheartedly was a tequila dispenser instead. A retirement party is how I spend the last 2 hours of my Tuesday for a guy named Bruce. Bruce until recently couldn't look me in eyes for all 4 years I've known him. Some weird social anxiety, I'm told, but I still can't quite figure out why staring at the left side of my forehead was more comfortable for him than just meeting my gaze. Safe to say no cares are given to this being his last day, especially since he's called me Mary for as long as I've known him. Nonetheless, Esmeralda, best friend and makes work not completely bearable coworker, and I take refuge in the corner. A fortress against the office creepers who only stare at your chest and give unsolicited winks whenever you make eye contact. Genius idea of management to force a group of people to socialize with each other when on any normal day, I'd avoid the entirety of the office. No amount of money could force me to willingly be around these people. in order to avoid wanting to pull my eyelashes out one by one. People watching has been my favorite pastime. Since this party is as fun as a gynecologist appointment, I need to preoccupy my mind. Only good thing about today. The tension is palpable. It oozes out of pores of this socializing we're supposed to be doing. No camaraderie, just glares. First, Joyce and Nancy. Joyce hates Nancy after Nancy was caught making out with Joyce's husband last year at the Christmas party. No idea why two beautiful, successful women are fighting over a beer-bellied 40-year-old man named Stanley. Could not be me. My vote is for both women to dump his ass. Pronto. Second, Dan and Eric. Cousins, who are currently at odds since the family cabin was left to one and not the other when their grandmother, Esther, died in the spring. No one cares about poor grandma being gone, just the luxury cabin. Sad stuff. Who knew $250,000 would come between two guys who were once best friends? Aren't there rules for this sort of thing? Third, Ava and Noah. This is what has held mainly just my attention the whole time we've been forced to be here. Exactly 34 minutes and counting. Esmeralda couldn't care less, but she indulges me as I say, I'm serious. Look at them. They're basically fucking each other with their eyes. Mia, they're both single people in their 20s. If they want to eye-fuck each other, let them. Say nonchalantly as her attention moves to whatever is under her right index finger. It's not about letting them, I just don't think they know that their feelings are mutual. I mean, think back on their interactions. At the Christmas party, they spent the whole time talking on the balcony under the damn stars like they do in rom-com movies. The quarter group meeting, they kept looking at each other and smiling when they thought no one was paying attention to them. You were paying attention, though, Mia mumbles under her breath. My eyes narrow as I clear my throat to continue. The retreat in June. Weren't they the ones who got lost during the hike together? I mean, come on. Who gets lost on a hike with 15 other people, huh? I'm not making this up. They like each other. Are we back in middle school, Mia? Like? Really? Mocks while I keep my eyes on the couple while my arms fold across my chest. I'm just saying it's true. Look at them as I slap Esmeralda's arm to get her attention that has been hijacked by whatever is of interest on the hem of her shirt. She looks up and we both stare on as Noah laughs about something on Ava's phone. As they continue to laugh with each other, Ava puts her hand on Noah's lower arm, holding him as if he was her anchor. Noah, on the other hand, can't stop smiling as she talks about whatever is so funny. Like it's a joke, only they know the punchline too. Noah listens, Ava blushes. They exchange that soft, shy smile that people who like each other do to try and not be too obvious while simultaneously being obvious as hell. Why do you even pay so much attention to them anyway? Asked, a knowing look in her eyes. She's convinced I like Noah. Or Ava. Maybe both. Neither of which is true, but I will admit I focus on them a little too much. The simple answer, though? It's nice to see two people who aren't afraid to show that they care. Call it stereotypical or cliche, but it's refreshing to watch love develop in real life. No social media messages or swiping. No side eyes or groping on the dance floor. In its innocence, it's both scary and exhilarating. The idea that you've maybe finally found your person. Like they're teenagers again, swapping flushed cheeks and soft gazes, all while standing a little too close for people in a platonic relationship. All I'm met with in today's dating pool are brothers who can't commit and women-to-women conversations about keeping our standards high. It results in nothing but a convoluted mess of people wanting but never actually finding love. Everyone is either too scared or their ego's too big to make the first move. It's exhausting trying to navigate all the rules of do's and don't while pretending to care as little as possible. Hello, Earth to Mia. Did you hear what I said? Esmeralda exclaims as she waves her hand in front of my face. Snapping out of my daze, I ignore her comment by replying, I'm telling you, I'm right. In fact, let's bet on it. If I'm right, you pay for the next 2 Wednesday night happy hours, and if I'm wrong, you let me date your hot-ass brother. Esmeralda interrupts, laughing at the look on my face. Absolutely not, yes. I forbid it. I'll wear you down eventually, Mia. How dare you cockblock true love, she replies playfully. Esmeralda has had a crush on my brother since that one time in high school where she walked into my house without knocking and Levi wasn't wearing a shirt. Over my dead body, plus he's been with Caitlin for 4 years now. I think that ship has sailed, don't you think? Anyway, focus. Yes, I know I'm right about this. I can tell at this point Esmeralda is quite sick of me. Based on her body language, I know Esmeralda is sick of me and this conversation, but the look in her eyes scream, "Don't care either way, but I will take free drinks," as she shakes my outstretched hand. "Fine, deal," she remarks, as she gathers her bag to leave. "And for all my pain and suffering I've had to endure by not only being in this room but also being forced to listen to you ramble on, you owe me a drink. A large one at that." As I laugh, I grab my bag and we head out the conference room. 1 year later, "I'm just so happy for you both," I exclaim excitingly as I take a sip of my margarita. It's Wednesday, so happy hour is in full swing, but this time, Ava and Noah have joined us. Esmeralda is at the bar grabbing another drink, and while we wait for her, I reminisce about what all has happened since Bruce's retirement party. Nancy ended up leaving Stanley while Joyce dated him shortly after, only to leave him as well. He's been trying to get with every woman in the office ever since. Eric and Dan decided it was best to share the cabin regardless of whose name was on the deed. Something about a schedule that was fair yet equal for both. Similar to visitation rights, but in this instance, the children are a 1995 log cabin in Wyoming. My attention turns to Ava and Noah, who are grinning at each other after Ava plants a kiss on his cheeks. They recently got engaged after their vacation to visit her parents in New England. Noah proposed on the beach while the ocean sprayed them with mist, and both families watched as he got down on one knee. They discovered that Esmeralda and I go to weekly happy hours, and they've been joining us ever since. If you ask them, they'd say that they had no idea they both liked each other in the beginning. It's only after Noah sent Ava an anonymous note that he swears he never sent, confessing his feelings about her. Ava reached out to him and confessed she felt the same way, and they became official a month after Stanley's party. They never did find out it was me who wrote the note. Nothing wrong with nudging people a little bit to get things moving. Whether you call it fate, God, or destiny, if true love can happen for others, maybe, just maybe I can allow myself to hold out hope that one day it'll happen to me. Next story, the champagne glittered in the light from the chandelier. Ellie gripped the microphone and glanced over at Nick. He winked at her and reached for the hand of his new bride next to him. Ellie glowered at him. She was not supposed to be giving this speech. This was for the best man. But at the last minute, she'd been handed a mic and told it was her turn. She cleared her throat and looked out at the room full of faces. There was Nick's mom, smiling at her. There was Bree's dad, looking proudly at his daughter in white. She knew everyone in the room, including the group of girls evil-eyeing her from table 6. Ellie pasted on her happiest smile and took a deep breath. While she really was truly very happy for her best friend and his new wife, she did not enjoy having all eyes on her. It had been her least favorite part of her own wedding. But Nick had stood by her side and given a speech at her request. It was the least she could do. Ellie looked at Nick and Bree again and smiled. "Does anyone here know the story of how Nick and I met?" she asked. She flashed an evil grin at Nick, who groaned audibly and raised a hand. "I want to preface this with, I was a dumb kid. And a jerk." He put his hand over his face and laughed. "I had just transferred to a new French class. Now, in my previous French class, everyone participated. So day 1 in this new class, Madam, I don't remember her name, asked a question. So I answered, and immediately, from behind me, I hear a boy say, 'Can you shut the hell up?' Gasps came from the crowd and Ellie laughed. That's what I said. I turned around to see Nick just glaring at me. If eyes could throw daggers, I would have been impaled on the spot. More chuckles came from the crowd. Ellie saw Nick's mom with her mouth slightly open, looking shocked that such a phrase could come from her son. "It's all right, Mrs. G," Ellie said, addressing her. "We didn't get along for a while. In fact, I don't even remember how we actually became friends." Ellie looked over at Nick, who just shrugged. "But you know what? I've never ever had a better friend than Nick. Nick, who called me countless times to cheer me up when I didn't even tell him I was upset. Nick, who literally saved my life more than once. He knows me better than I know myself. Nick, who just... Ellie paused, wiping a tear away from her eye. Everyone in the audience waited quietly. Nick, who just... was such an ass for so many years and still sometimes is. The silence broke and everyone laughed, exhaling out the tense air. Nick, I love you to pieces and I am so proud of how far you've come and how much you've grown up. Bree, you married a wonderful man. Everyone murmured their agreements and smiled at the newlyweds. Now, I bet you all thought I was done. But I have just as good of a story about how I met Bree, because I actually knew her first. This time Bree let out a loud, sharp laugh. When we were in 6th grade health class, one of the first things we had to do was practice the Heimlich on someone. Bree and I were partnered up and we just looked at each other. I said something to the effect of, "Ready for me to hump you?" And the rest was history. We were so close from that day forward, until Bree moved back to her home state. We lost touch for a few years, but I am so happy that you guys found each other again. I love you guys so much. We all do, and we all wish you nothing but the absolute best. Cheers to you too, Ellie finished, raising her glass of champagne. Clinks were heard around the room, and there was silence for a brief moment while everyone took a sip. Ellie handed the mic off to the MC and returned to her seat. She caught Nick's eye and winked. He mouthed thank you and returned his attention to his new bride. Ellie relaxed into her chair, happy the speech was over and feeling like it went well. She stared at her hands for a moment, then lifted her eyes to the table number sitting in the center of her table. 6. She pretended to be super busy, settling her napkin onto her lap and began to eat her salad. The back of Ellie's neck burned as she felt everyone at the table staring at her. She silently cursed Bree for sitting her here. Bree knew everyone at this table hated Ellie. Why would she sit her here? Literally anywhere else would have worked. I'm going to grab a drink. The bar is free. Why don't you come with me? You look like you need one. It took Ellie a moment to realize that the question was directed at her. She looked up to see Kate standing next to her. Kate and Ellie had never had as bad of a falling out as Ellie'd had with everyone else. They had sort of made up years ago and just not spoken since. Come on, Kate urged. It'll be fine. Ellie dragged herself out of her seat and followed Kate to the bar. A shot and drink in hand later, Ellie was feeling a little more relaxed. Thank you for getting me out of there, Ellie said. It's not as bad as you think, Kate replied. You saw them all walk away from me at the ceremony. It's worse than I think. Ellie took a long sip of her vodka cranberry. Every sip relaxed her a little more, but every sip meant she had to stay that much longer to sober up to drive home. She had stayed for the ceremony to watch her best friend get married, and that had been her whole plan. She knew the reception was going to be a wait and see how bad it is situation before she could decide how long she was staying. Turns out it was worse than she was expecting. Ellie was torn on leaving. She wanted away from everyone's evil eyes, but didn't want to leave Nick's special night just yet. Give them a chance. Come sit next to me and I'll talk to you. We can bitch together and Lo will talk to you. She doesn't give a shit. Fine. Ellie sucked down the rest of her drink and grabbed a fresh one. Together her and Kate returned to table 6 and started chatting with Lo. She'd gotten a new job and was moving the next day. And Kate had been right. Lo didn't give a shit. That or she was just drunk enough not to. Dinner was served, and just as Ellie was started to think she could stay a little longer, she made a joke to the wrong person at the table. She didn't think anything of it. He was a stranger. Turned out he was the fiancé of the girl who hated her most. Can I speak with you? Outside. Ellie's stomach flopped. Of all the people she didn't want to have to talk to, Emily was the main one. Put on the spot, Ellie couldn't just say no, so she followed Emily outside. Her insides swirled in an unhappy boozy salad mess. She twirled a dark lock of hair in circles and looked down at their shoes. Ellie had opted for 3-inch chunky heels that tied, while Emily had gone for a low-heel nude sandal. They were almost the same height now, something that had always been a joke when they were growing up. I feel like I'm in trouble, Ellie blurted out. I'm so sorry, Emily said at the same time. What? Ellie met Emily's eyes. That was not at all what she had been expecting Emily to say. You were my best friend. I don't even know how we got so fucked up, but it wrecked me when we stopped talking. I know I played a big part. I can be such an ass, and I'm sure back then it was way worse. And then Ellie was crying. Damn, alcohol had lowered her wall just enough that all her anxiety and trepidation about the wedding spilled out. She wiped her tears away quickly, but they just kept coming. It's okay, she finally sniffled. Emily shook her head. No, it's not, and you don't have to say it is, especially if you still hate me. I just needed to apologize and make sure you knew how sorry I was. I miss you like crazy, but I also understand if this is a friendship you have no interest in being part of. Ellie giggled, which took them both by surprise. Don't laugh at me. Do you have any idea how sick I felt about coming to this wedding and knowing you'd be here? Ellie's eyes opened wide. Yes, because I fully considered not coming, but I couldn't do that to Nick. She paused for a minute, looking up at the dark sky. Stars were just starting to appear and a warm breeze swirled through the air around them. I don't hate you. I never did. I was hurt by everything you said. It was awful. You were my person, and you shit all over me. I don't hate you either. It was just so awful. I figured you had to hate me after everything. You didn't talk to any of us except Bree. Bree had my back, Ellie pointed out. Emily sighed in frustration. I know, and I should have. They're about to cut the cake, Kate said, popping out from the reception area. You better save me a piece. I didn't get a piece at my own wedding and I'm still pissed about it, Ellie said. That's bullshit. I'll save you too. Kate disappeared back inside. You got married? Emily said quietly. And divorced. Want to talk about it sometime? Definitely. Coffee sometime? As long as there's no booze in it, because boy am I not going to feel good tomorrow. I always thought it'd be you and me, Emily said quietly. What? Getting married and having kids and stuff? Sort of. I meant more like going to the clubs until we were too old for it and then settling down. Emily looked down at the floor. You have a kid, right? I do. She's almost 4. I've missed so much. I'm so sorry. Emily brushed a tear away. Ellie took a deep inhale, counting to 4 before releasing it on a count of 4. Her mouth formed into a hard line for just a moment, as if she were deep in thought. It is what it is. We can't change what we've missed. So let's finish off tonight and grab coffee sometime. Ellie shrugged and straightened her skirt. Deal. Deal. Emily and Ellie linked arms and walked back into the reception. Ellie savored every bite of the wedding cake and laughed with her old friends. When the music started up, Ellie hesitated. She hadn't come with a date and was prepared to just sit alone. She watched everyone on the dance floor with a pang of envy. She saw more glances being cast her way and grew even more uncomfortable. There were still so many people she didn't speak to anymore that she knew were eyeing her. Get up, Kate ordered, grabbing Ellie's arm. Come on. You're dancing, Emily said, taking Ellie's other arm. Fuck all of them, Kate said. The 3 of them headed to the dance floor to join Bree and Nick, forming their own little circle like they had when they were 15. And for just a little while that night, Ellie was happy. For just a little while that night, Ellie felt whole again.